This video is brought to you by Rocket Money, so do expect to hear more from them during the video. Gamers, first of all, a huge thank you for your kind words about the 1-year anniversary of our website this week in videogames.com. The team really appreciated hearing it, and it was great to welcome a bunch of new people into our community Discord. A big thanks to everyone who signed up as part of our anniversary sale, and to those who renewed their sub for another year. We truly do appreciate it. I've had a pretty busy week actually reviewing something in the background, more on that next week. Got 2 previews in the works, you'll hear more about them in August, but the big thing for me was that Halo Campaign Evolve review, which ended up taking way longer than I thought it would because I had a lot to say about that game, and lots of other people do too, if the general discourse and Steam user score is anything to go by. We'll talk more about it later in the show, but sadly, this doesn't seem to be the sort of win that Xbox desperately needs right now. Speaking of which, it's financial earnings call season now, which means we've been able to get some clarity about how Microsoft's decisions over the last year have worked out for Xbox. Spoiler alert, not so good. According to Microsoft's Q4 and full earnings for FY26, Xbox's earnings have steeply declined across the board. In Q4, Xbox's content and services revenue reduced 10% and hardware revenue decreased 13%. Annually then, Xbox content and services revenue decreased by 5% and hardware revenue declined by a massive 29%, representing an overall revenue decrease of 7% or roughly $1.7 billion US. Microsoft CFO Amy Hood explained that the quarterly and yearly decline was attributed to a strong first-party content performance in prior periods, respectively. And while that may be true, it certainly doesn't change the dire fundamentals of Xbox's present position. The fact that many of their first-party titles were multi-platform also doesn't help with console sales, which obviously explains the sharp decline in hardware revenue. Raising the price of your console multiple times doesn't help either. Hood goes on to say that losses were offset in part by growth in Xbox Game Pass, though I'd imagine that even that growth wasn't quite as much as Xbox would have hoped for given all the pricing changes. The Xbox division isn't the only one going through it though, as Microsoft's personal computing segment saw a 7% quarterly drop in Windows revenue, which the company attributed to, quote, lower PC market demand, end quote. Geez, I wonder why. The company also noted here that the severance expenses and impairment charges related to the 1,600 layoffs made by Xbox, as well as the divestiture of several of its studios, resulted in an 8% increase in operating expenses for personal computing. Putting all this into context though, it's telling to note that Microsoft as a whole aren't too affected by all this. On the contrary, the company reported significant profits with a revenue increase of 18% and operating income increasing 21% over the last year. While we focus squarely on Xbox stuff over here, the reality is that it's a fairly small business unit within an absolutely gargantuan company, and I can't imagine Satya Nadella loses too much sleep when Xbox hardware reports yet another negative quarter. So yeah, none of this was unexpected really, it just casts a brighter spotlight on Xbox's continued decline owing to their decision making and the ongoing Rampocalypse. Will they be able to turn things around? Who knows, but Xbox boss Asher Sharma seems to think so. We know this because The Verge obtained a new internal memo from Xbox that outlined Sharma's 4-year growth plan, and while most of it is the usual shareholder drivel, there were some notable takeaways. The plan is reportedly divided into 3 stages. The first, as echoed by Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella during the earnings call, is to, quote, return the business to growth in fiscal 27, end quote. The second stage is to accelerate that growth in FY 28 and 29 by leaning on what they're calling their 4 C's, quote, core, strengthen our platform led by console, content, grow great games into global franchises, creation, make Minecraft the world's creator platform, and finally, connection, extend the worlds that fans love, end quote. One point that really stands out there is that Minecraft bit. They're wording here calling it a creator platform, all but guarantees that they're looking to take it in the same direction as something like Roblox or Fortnite, supporting a lot more user-generated content. I mean, honestly, that would make a hell of a lot of sense. We saw reports a few weeks ago that the money coming in from Minecraft was basically carrying Xbox Game Studios, so there is no doubt that that game is still absolutely gigantic and it could be leveraged more than it currently is. The third stage then, according to Sharma, is, quote, scale that works, end quote, and by FY 2030, she says, quote, our ambition is to be halfway to our long-term daily player goal with sustained double-digit growth in players and engagement and industry-leading margins, end quote. I'll remind you that that daily player goal is 1 billion daily players, and they're currently seeing around 100 million players a day, so that's a pretty big jump. She then reiterated her plans to focus on, quote, our strongest franchises and biggest new ideas, end quote, something already evident in their recent Fallout announcements. And she also said they have long-term plans to explore these franchises across, quote, film, television, consumer products, sponsorships, live experiences, and form new partnerships globally, including China, end quote. So yeah, it certainly remains to be seen whether or not all of this will be enough to pull them out of their downward spiral. At the very least, looking at what's on the horizon, I can definitely see Microsoft having a strong year ahead, since they've got a number of big first-party releases coming up, such as Call of Duty Modern Warfare 4 and Fable, alongside Xbox exclusives Gears of War E-Day and Clockwork Revolution. In fact, it's looking to be one of their biggest years in a long while. Note that State of Decay 3 and Senua were also meant to be part of that slate, but the fate of those titles is still very uncertain given recent events. Speaking of which, one of the studios still reeling from those events is Double Fine Productions, who after regaining their independence have announced layoffs affecting 23 workers. A Twitter post attributed to the studio's founder and CEO Tim Schafer reads, quote, "Today, Double Fine Productions let go of 23 members of our staff. As a small, tightly knit team, these actions are not taken lightly. Only the survival of our studio would ever make us consider such a painful action. Our transition to becoming an independent company also means becoming a size that we can sustain. The people we are losing were all important. They all made an impact on our games and culture, and they will be missed. We are committed to supporting each affected person as best we can, and we thank them for their hard work and commitment to the creative spirit we cherish here at Double Fine," end quote. These layoffs were expected since without Xbox's support, it was inevitable they'd have to right-size themselves for the long term. Nevertheless, it is still a shame to see. I mean, Double Fine were the only Xbox-owned studio in the last decade to make a Game of the Year nominee with Psychonauts 2. And they continue to make wildly experimental and imaginative games like Keeper and Kiln. This is a good studio, making good games, and I think Microsoft made a terrible mistake spitting them out, but hey, I'm sure the cost saving let them buy a few new server racks and a data center, and that's what really matters these days, isn't it? Alright, how about some rare good Xbox news for a change? This week, Xbox announced backwards compatibility for 4 titles from the original Xbox console, allowing them to be played on Windows. Those 4 games are Fusion Frenzy, Blinks, The Time Sweeper, love to see it, Crimson Skies, High Road to Revenge, and Conquer Live and Reloaded. According to Xbox, support for Xbox achievements will also come to these titles in the coming months, so that's really nice to hear. Jason Rowland, Xbox's VP of Next Generation, says the slate of games, quote, marks the beginning of a broader effort to preserve Xbox games from the past and bring them to the PC over time, end quote. And there is evidence of that being a real goal. As identified by Twitter user Nathan here, it turns out these games are running on an Xbox emulator running on a 360 emulator, which does open up the possibility of Xbox 360 games also becoming backwards compatible and playable on Windows. So yeah, that's pretty nice and a great win for games preservation in a time where those are becoming exceedingly rare. Before we continue, a quick word from this video's sponsor, Rocket Money. Right now, life's expensive, and by life, I mean everything, whether it's groceries, insurance, car payments, or in-game currencies. But come on, you shouldn't be buying those anyway. Luckily, Rocket Money is here to help you get on top of your finances, and it does this in a variety of really convenient ways. Setting it up is the starting point. If you live in the United States, you can link Rocket Money to your bank account or credit card, and after that, Rocket Money starts analyzing your transactions. Subscriptions are the big one, of course. We all have a cheeky 1 or 2 subscriptions laying around that we've forgotten about, and Rocket Money not only helps you identify them, but they can also help you cancel them with just a few clicks, making it very easy to walk away from subscriptions that you no longer need. Its handy spending tracker helps categorize your spending so that the next time your boomer dad accuses you of eating too much avocado on toast, you can be like, "Dad, I didn't do that. I buy $20 Asahi bowls, thank you very much." Rocket Money can even help you renegotiate a better rate on certain bills, and it can help you track and monitor your credit rating if that matters to you. It's just a really easy to use, intuitive platform that gives you a leg up when it comes to staying on top of your finances. So if you'd like to check it out, just scan the QR code on screen, click the link below, or visit rocketmoney.com/skillup. That link will actually get you a free premium trial, but you can also download it for free to try it out. A big thanks to Rocket Money for sponsoring the video, and now let's get back to it. One little footnote to that story about backwards compatible titles is that depending on when you were trying to play these games, you might not have been able to owing to a massive Xbox outage. In a post from the Xbox support Twitter account posted on July 27th, just after 2:30 a.m. Pacific time, Xbox said it was aware of, quote, some users encountering errors when attempting to sign in, see your game library, or launch games, end quote. The issues persisted for hours, with Xbox only confirming that services were fully operational again after 2:30 p.m. PT the same day. That means some users had around 12 hours of downtime. Xbox's Chief Technology Officer Scott Van Vliet has since apologized for the situation and offered a comprehensive breakdown of what was going on, saying, quote, this is an unacceptable situation and we must do better to support you. Over the coming weeks, you'll hear more from me about our services, our platform, and the work we're doing to make Xbox better, and that starts with some transparency about this incident, end quote. He says the issue was a result of a failing license service that Xbox depends on, which, quote, caused some sign-in scenarios to fail, and it caused many scenarios that require an entitlement check to also fail, such as listing your full library and launching games that you own, end quote. He goes on to explain why it came back earlier for some than others, how they resolved the issue, and how they're running a full post-incident review to ensure it doesn't happen again. While you're at it, would you mind explaining why you need to be signed into 2 individual Xbox accounts when playing split-screen Halo? Please and thank you. Believe it or not though, Xbox weren't the only ones to have a mass outage this week, as Sony's PSN also went down for an extended period. On the morning of July 25th, the PSN suddenly went down for over 4 hours. That was apparently caused by issues with Amazon Web Services, as an alert from AWS happened around the same time. But even after that was resolved, the PSN needed to be brought down for maintenance for several hours before it was completely resolved. What was especially unfortunate about this was the timing, as it happened just as the beta for the hotly anticipated Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls went live. Note this game is PS5 and PC only, So yeah, all the console players who wanted to jump into this needed to wait a while longer. But believe it or not, PS5 folks got off easy because the PC version of the game was cooked. There were issues with PSN logins due to the outage, issues with anti-cheat functionality, and worst of all, it was terribly optimized, especially for a stylized game, and you can imagine how massively disruptive FPS drops would be in a fighting game, given it's all about split-second timings. The studio has since posted to Twitter saying they're working through things, quote, "Thank you everyone who jumped into the open beta and joined the fight. This is exactly why we run these, to get the game in your hands and find out what we can make better before launch. To our PC players, message received. The team is already hard at work on the performance you deserve with improvements lined up for day one," end quote. The post then went on to list out the specific fixes. Hope the full launch fares better because outside of the technical issues, reception to the game was overall fairly positive, with praise aimed at its tight controls, unique character kits, character designs, and animations. I, for one, am actually really excited about this one, even as someone who doesn't play fighting games, so I'm really hoping these kinks get worked out before launch. If Marvel isn't your thing, then perhaps you're excited about that recently released Avatar fighting game. If so, you may want to keep that excitement in check. While the game has been universally praised for its faithful visuals and solid core fighting mechanics, many have taken issues with the surprising lack of expected features. The launch was notably absent a number of core features such as ranked online play and keyboard mapping. There was also no spectator mode, and lobbies didn't support more than 2 players, which meant that planned tournaments had to be completely cancelled. What's especially odd was that the things that were meant to be included in the $50 premium edition of the game, as opposed to the standard $30 version, they just weren't in the game. These included things like an art book, soundtrack, and unique HUD skins. Pre-order content like exclusive skins and character voting rights were also completely missing. Furthermore, there's no localization, the Switch version doesn't support crossplay with other platforms, and the Xbox version of the game was delayed from July 23rd to September 3rd, literally hours before it launched. The game's Twitter account posted a roadmap of sorts indicating that all these features are on the way, but without providing any exact dates. Not sure what's going on here. Like, many of these things were actively shown off in trailers, so were they just not ready for launch, or did they think they'd be able to piecemeal it out to keep people around for longer? I know this game has had some troubled development and was probably made on a fairly limited budget, so I'm definitely willing to extend the team a little grace, but still, this whole situation is just super weird, and it seems like such a misstep given all the attention on the game right now with the recent release of the Avatar movie. As the saying goes, that's rough, buddy. I don't know, I've never watched the show, but Austin tells me that's a thing. You know who else has it rough? People who want to actually own their games as opposed to just renting digital licenses for them. The players are fighting back as best they can against PlayStation's recent decision to abandon physical media. The PlayStation community has been circulating the PS Blackout hashtag on Twitter this week, urging players to boycott PlayStation for a week in August of this year to protest Sony's decision to end physical disc production for new games in 2028 onwards. This movement was ignited by the Does It Play account, with the hashtag accompanied by a statement that claims, quote, "PlayStation has never felt more disconnected from its community. Ending physical discs in 2028 feels like the last straw. We understand there's only so much SIE can control, but with decisions that are within its control, the company continues to mismanage the strong position it inherited from the PS4 era," end quote. The post has gained a fair amount of traction, accruing over 1.8 million views, 21k likes, and 6.5k retweets at the time of writing. The movement asked PlayStation users not to engage with the PlayStation Network from the 23rd of August until the 30th. This means not signing in and playing any games on PlayStation accounts, turning off your console, and not purchasing anything from the PSN store. The statement says, quote, "We feel this period gives publishers and developers minimal impact while still giving players a voice," end quote. Now look, I am totally behind the desire to push back here, but frankly, I very much doubt this blackout will even feature as a bullet point in PlayStation's daily stand-up meetings. At the end of the day, PlayStation have already priced in this decision, and even if they hadn't, the impact of such a boycott is severely weakened when it's happening in a week where nothing is really going on. I mean, do we really think PlayStation's going to care if people are skipping out on Star Wars Zero Company, the next Plague Tale game, and Aliens Fireteam Elite 2? Like, if people were serious about this, time it for the launch week of GTA 6. That'd get some goddamn headlines. Hell, CNN and Fox News would cover that shit. Failing that, a first-party offering like Wolverine makes a lot more sense, since it'd be targeting Sony where it hurts them the most. Again, I do support the spirit behind this, and I think Sony are making a tremendous mistake by walking away from physical media, since it erodes one of the most attractive selling points for the console gaming experience. But if real change is the goal, then I don't think this hashtag is going to be enough. Lightning round time now, and given that it's financial season, we're bound to see reports from the major game studios. And first came off the rank was Capcom. Year-on-year net sales for Q1 have increased 54.7%, with operating profit up 66.9%. Nice. Sort of. Additionally, ordinary profit was up a whopping 81.1%. Across its catalog, Capcom sold 23.81 million units during the quarter, up from 14.6 million units sold in the same period of the previous financial year. As for individual game sales, Pragmata has sold over 2.5 million copies so far, which Capcom describes as, quote, "a favorable performance," end quote. Damn, really understating that one. Meanwhile, Resident Evil Requiem has now surpassed 8 million units sold since its February launch, and Devil May Cry 5 has now surpassed 14 million lifetime units, with 1.2 1.29 million copies sold in just the last quarter. Capcom also says there's been a huge spike in the sales for the Monster Hunter series this quarter, attributing this to the announcement of the expansion for Monster Hunter Wilds coming in 2027, though they did not give specific numbers. So yeah, suffice it to say, Capcom are still crushing it, and there's still more to look forward to with Onimusha and Dragon's Dogma 2 Dark Arisen later this year. On that note, Capcom producer Masachika Kawata spoke to Game Informer and suggested we might be getting yearly Resident Evil titles. On the topic of remake, he says, quote, being able to revisit older games and remake them helps Capcom meet that goal of releasing a Resident Evil title each year, but it also allows the team to continually challenge themselves and hone their craft. That's not to say the remakes are any less important. In fact, they're just as important as mainline titles. Capcom is lucky enough to have found this cycle, end quote. I don't know, man. I'm yet to meet a video game series that's benefited from an annual release cycle, but hey, we've still got some remakes to get through, so I guess we've still got a bit of runway before things start to get a bit hairy. Ubisoft also reported its earnings for the quarter, and they're cruising along, it seems. The company reported 256 million euro in net bookings, which they say is slightly above expectations, but down 9% year on year, with AC Shadows making for a strong comparable period last year. On Assassin's Creed, they announced the Black Flag Resynced has now sold 3.5 million copies in 2 weeks, exceeding annual expectations in just 14 days. They say it generated around $17 million in pre-orders alone and will likely recoup costs of development in the coming quarter. Hope they put that extra money towards some DLC, and by that I mean Freedom Cry, because I really don't think the game needs any more of those newly made missions and quest lines. Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot was asked about his thoughts on Sony dropping physical discs during the Q&A, to which he remarked, quote, what we saw on the PC is that it helped grow the market. There's also some pressure for the future on the cost of machines, and being able to be only digital will help to have a more accessible machine, I would say. There are pluses and minuses, but we think it will not disturb the industry too much, end quote. I don't know, man. I feel like the PlayStation and Xbox players who couldn't play their games this week for hours at a time might disagree. Bethesda Game Studios Union 1BGS has filed a legal complaint against the studio, accusing it of violating Canadian labor laws following the wave of layoffs at Xbox-owned game studios. The union claimed that laid-off employees in the US and Canada were told they would be employed until September. However, Canadian employees received termination emails on July 7th offering, quote, the bare legal minimum in terms of severance, end quote. These include 8 weeks of pay instead of, quote, the minimum legal notice, any outstanding vacation pay, etc., end quote. And affected employees were also set to lose group health insurance effective immediately. Worth mentioning that this occurred on the same day Bethesda confirmed Xbox had greenlit a new Fallout game developed by Obsidian, and that the remasters of Fallout 3 and New Vegas were in development. Nice one, Xbox. The union says, quote, Bethesda and Xbox leadership depend on labor to make the millions, and yet when we do, we are disposed of. The cycle of workers paying for the mistakes of management ends here, end quote. Let's hope so. Warhorse Studios previously announced that alongside an open-world Lord of the Rings RPG, we also had a new Kingdom Come adventure in development. Well, we might just have a name for it now, as this week the studio was spotted trademarking the title Kingdom Come Salvation in Europe. Given that this isn't a numbered title and it has a different suffix, this kind of says to me that it won't be the third title in the Kingdom Come Deliverance saga. If so, I'll miss my boy Henry, but hey, I'm keen to see what Warhorse might do with an entirely new hero and story. Either way, I am day one. KCD2 was a generational RPG, and if you haven't experienced it yet, then please go and buy it right now. It's amazing. According to Deadline, Universal Pictures has signed a deal with Atari for rights to make film adaptations of retro games. Properties include 10 titles, those being Asteroids, Adventure, Berserk, Breakout, Centipede, Millipede, Missile Command, Pong, and Yar's Revenge. Yar. What's his story? The first project will reportedly be, quote, produced by Entertainment 360's Guymon Cassidy from a screenplay by Matt Riley and Carl Hamp, end quote. The latter of the two was a producer on Hellboy and also worked on that Jungle Cruise movie. I don't know, man. I feel like these rank at the top of a list of adaptations that nobody asked for. If you want to see a Pong movie, just watch Mighty Supreme. And if you want a Centipede movie, just... Actually, never mind. Don't Google that. GTA Online casino gambling minigames have been banned in Australia. So some brief context here. An update back in 2019 added various casinos and resorts to GTA Online, and they house all manner of gambling minigames like blackjack, roulette, poker, slot machines, etc. The minigames are played using in-game casino chips earned via in-game activities, but you can also purchase them with shark cards. And those are, of course, bought with real-world money. And so the hammer has now been brought down, as this week those in Australia trying to play those minigames were instead hit with a notification reading, quote, this feature is not available for you, end quote. Given Australia's strict gambling regulations, this isn't a surprise, to be honest, especially since we're far from the only country this has happened to. When this casino update first released, these gambling games were immediately blocked in over 50 countries, including China, Poland, South Korea, many others. So yeah, while this sucks for those who are having fun without paying money, I think it was just a matter of time before Australia followed suit. At the time of writing, both Rockstar Games and Australian games industry trade body IGEA have not responded to our request for comment on the matter. We just got the accidental announcement of the next Kratos God of War game. Sony Santa Monica creative head Cory Barlog recently held a panel at Comic-Con to talk about their upcoming Laufey game, but it's there he let slip that he'd been chatting with, quote, the director of the next Kratos game earlier this week about all the different things that are going Did I just announce the next Kratos game? Kratos is in another game immediately after this that directly connects to the events of the Laofa game, but don't say anything about it to anyone, end quote. Bit late for that one, Corey. He does go on to say, quote, everything we're doing in the Faye game is a continuation of what came before and to set up and expand what comes next. Faye is, while it's a different thing, it's still part of the larger tapestry of what we truly want to explore, all of these different characters in there, but there's always going to be Kratos games, like throughout the whole history. We're super excited about that, end quote. And finally, Wu Chang Fallen Feathers is getting a sequel. You might recall the future of this series looking a little dire after Lenzi, the studio who worked on the original game, was dissolved in mid-April of this year after internal disputes following the departure of the game's producer and director Jia Xuan, with the game's publisher 505 Games then gaining the rights to the IP. But it seems like things are looking up for Wu Chang fans, as this week 505 Games announced on Twitter that, quote, Wu Chang's story is far from over. Today we're excited to share that 505 Games has officially entered into a new partnership with Jia Xuan, the original creator of Wu Chang Fallen Feathers, and his new studio Indolfinity, to jointly create a brand new chapter of the Wu Chang IP. As of now, the Wu Chang sequel has officially entered its preparation phase. Indolfinity will lead the creative development, while 505 Games will provide funding and global publishing. Future development will remain firmly rooted in China, end quote. That's really encouraging to hear. By most accounts, Wu Chang was a very solid Souls-like, and it sold well, particularly in China. So yeah, it probably does deserve a sequel. Looking forward to hearing more about this one in 4 to 5 years' time. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, a few little bits and pieces. One thing coming out of Comic-Con was the release date of God of War Laofe, the next one from Sony Santa Monica that wasn't revealed very long ago. It's coming kind of soon, believe it or not. February 16th next year, which is starting to become the new September 2026, but it's like that every year, so we really shouldn't be too surprised. This is during that panel where creative director Cory Barlog dropped the tidbit that there will be another Kratos adventure after this one, so settle down everyone, Daddy's coming home. Final Fantasy XIV FanFest also took place last week, where they dropped an in-depth trailer for the next major expansion called Evercold. The star of the show is a new raid which is themed after Final Fantasy VII Remake. Man, if that's not going to get any hesitant Final Fantasy fans across the line, then I don't know what will. Maybe that Neon Genesis Evangelion crossover raid, huh? Nah, that Venn diagram is just a single circle, surely. One new game announced this week was yet another one featuring Kevin Smith's characters Jay and Silent Bob. They just had their retro beat-em-up released a few months ago, and now they're back at it with a farming simulator called Jay and Silent Bob's Joint Venture. And surprising absolutely no one, it turns out in this game you're growing weed. Just a broad 2027 release date for this one. I do wonder if it'll see a release in Australia. A few specific release dates now. Blood Dungeon is that bullet hell platforming roguelike from the developers of Nidhogg and Wheelworld. We featured this one on our radar segment last month, and now it has a firm release date, August 25th for all platforms. That expansion for Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl also got a release date. It's called Cost of Hope, and it's also landing around the end of August on the 20th. That release also coincides with the game's version 2.0 update, so maybe a good chance to see how much it's managed to shape up if you bounced off the technical issues at launch, like I did, PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. And speaking of expansions, Neo 3 is getting one called Hell Rising on the 19th of August. This one will add new weapons, enemies, and a new area if you couldn't get enough of that one. PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles for that one too. Alright, so what came out last week? Well, Halo Campaign Evolved was the big one. A big moment for this franchise and for Xbox, really. At least it was until they changed their mind on the whole multi-platform thing. So how did it go? Not too bad on account of a strong 83 on OpenCritic, but definitely some big thoughts coming out about what this means for the future of the series. Morgan and PC Gamer had a lot to say on this one, ultimately landing at a 70 out of 100. They didn't think too much of the 3 new prequel story missions and were pretty miffed about the lack of multiplayer, saying, quote, a serious blemish that ignores a huge reason people love these games and will personally limit its lasting appeal. I've been denied an Unreal 5 remake of Blood Gulcher Skybox, and that must be some sort of crime, end quote. They concluded with this, quote, the next time I want to play the first Halo, I don't have many reasons to reinstall this 70GB remake. It was cool to see another interpretation of the game special to me, but the glitzy coat of paint primarily highlights how right Bungie got it in 2001 and how its modern stewards are nudging Halo in an unremarkable direction, end quote. Honestly, I really couldn't agree more with that review. I played through Campaign Evolved and then the original back-to-back, and I was struck by how much more I was enjoying the original. And that's not just nostalgia talking, by the way, since I'm 100% down for a good remake or remaster, but I just don't like a lot of what Halo Studios have done here. The visual uplift is great, but it's undermined by some art direction that I'm just not on board with. The way that color, lighting, and reflections are all handled here is so gaudy and at times just ugly. The new cutscenes are diabolically bad and honestly kind of embarrassing for one of the best funded studios in the video game business, and the changes to the combat sandbox are almost all steps backwards, particularly when it comes to enemy AI. And man, these bonus missions, oof. When you're doing a remake, you really don't want all the new stuff you've made to be the worst part of the entire package. That's exactly what's happened here with these prequel missions. I didn't end up not recommending this because honestly, Halo Combat Evolved is basically bulletproof and timeless to the point where it can absolutely withstand some body blows, but it is a death by 1,000 cuts here, and in the end, I just found myself disappointed by how little this remake aims for, how little it achieves, and that's a real shame given that this is the first major Halo release in 5 years and will likely be the only Halo release we get for quite some time. And Anyway, let's move on to another highly anticipated blockbuster release from last week, Dino Blade. It's that dinosaur Souls-like we featured in our radar segment last week. And by the way, we have a really fun interview with the main developer behind this one up on the website. He talks about how a short animation clip of a dinosaur with a sword he posted while he was unemployed led to him getting a job at Sucker Punch animating and mocapping bosses in Ghost of Yotei and making this indie project on the side. Go check it out. It's a great story. I'll leave a link to that one below the like button. Anyway, Dino Blade launched last week after about 4 years of work, and it's landed on a very positive sentiment after about 1,700 reviews. Here's a really nice one from Kamikaze after 7 hours with the game. Quote, "As a kid, Spinosaurus was always my favorite dinosaur, so the moment I saw Dino Blade, I knew I had to buy it. That said, I honestly expected it to be nothing more than a meme game that I'd play for an hour and forget about. I could have been more wrong. The game completely changed my opinion. I ended up loving the parry system, even though I'm probably one of the worst people when it comes to parrying in games. Landing a perfect parry is incredibly satisfying and made me want to keep improving. Is the game perfect? No, it has some rough edges, but I honestly think that's part of what makes it special. Instead of trying to be a polished AAA game, it has its own personality. You can really feel the passion that went into making it. By the end, I wasn't thinking about Spinosaurus anymore. I was just having a genuinely great time. This ended up being one of the biggest surprises I've played in a while, and I'm really happy I gave it a chance. Definitely recommend," end quote. Nice to see a happy ending for dinosaurs for a change. Okay, so what's coming out this week? Things are still revving up as we head into August and September, but the big names are really starting to come through this week, with the first cat out of the bag being the next non-Pokemon game from Game Freak, which is really unlike anything they've ever done before, Beast of Reincarnation. This one's a fully 3D action RPG set in a post-apocalyptic and overgrown Japan. It's set by a kind of plant-based parasite where you play as outcast Emma and her big dog Ku on an adventure to rid the world of giant monsters. A couple of selling points for this one are the combat system, which mixes real-time and turn-based elements in a pretty neat-looking way, as well as the emphasis on Emma and Ku and the relationship between them. Hey, if Game Freak could get the whole world attached to what is essentially a rodent, I'm sure they can do a bang-up job with this very handsome-looking dog. Really looking forward to seeing how this one shapes up when it ships out, actually. This one's being published by Fictions, which is a label formerly known as Private Division and still owned by Take-Two Interactive, and it will release on August 3rd for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series consoles. The day after that, on Tuesday, August 4th, we've got another game from a studio best known for a video game about charming and annoying animals, House House. It's the small Australian indie team that put together the iconic Untitled Goose game almost 7 years ago now, and they're finally ready to release the follow-up they've been working on all this time. It's called Big Walk. Now, we've talked about this one on the show before, but the gist is that it's a purely co-op only puzzle and exploration game. There are going to be a lot of comparisons for this one to the friend slop genre that exploded in recent years, but having played this one with a team, I think it's worth saying that there's a lot more to this. Yes, it does involve getting together as goofy characters and getting involved in hijinks as you solve inventive puzzles across a massive world, but there is a finite end, and a big part of the moment-to-moment experience is just going for a big walk and enjoying the sights and sounds of this world that is greatly inspired by the Australian bush. As part of that adventure, you'll be required to split the group or go it alone to solve challenges and unlock more of the map, and subsequently you'll enjoy 5 to 10 minutes worth of peace and quiet and reflection, or have a chat to catch up with whoever you happen to be running an errand with as you leisurely stroll to the thing you need to get to. I feel like this one's definitely one that's at risk of going under the radar because of the requirements of co-op and a persistent group leader, kind of like an IRL board game night. But from the few hours we've played of it so far, it definitely feels like it would be worth it. Big Walk comes out on PC and PS5, and it'll also be available as one of the monthly free games on offer if you've got any tier of PS Plus. Alright, from a couple of brand new original ideas to one that's been done 14 times before, Final Fantasy XIV Online is also launching on the Switch 2 on August 14th, about a week after they scrapped the mobile version too. So if you want to play this thing on the go, then this version is probably going to be your best bet. Now, there are some caveats for this one, however. While you don't need to be a subscriber to the Nintendo Switch Online service to be able to play this one on the Switch 2, you do need to purchase a Switch 2 specific Final Fantasy XIV subscription to access it after the 30-day free trial. To be clear, if you're already subscribed to Final Fantasy XIV on another platform, that won't carry across, but you can get a half-price discount on the Switch 2 subscription, which is something, I guess. If you are a Final Fantasy XIV player, please let me know how this port runs. I'd be really interested to see how that goes. Alright, getting back to something more straightforward now, farming simulators. One of the more popular ones to have cropped up in the wake of the Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing boom post-COVID is Fields of Mystria. This one is launching into version 1.0 on Wednesday, August 5th, and it's coming out with an overwhelmingly positive user sentiment on Steam after almost 30,000 reviews. Weirdly, no console release date announcement yet, but surely it can't be too far behind. Feels like a hot minute since we've had a Metroidvania, but there's one releasing on Steam next Wednesday that looks pretty nice. It's called Akatori. This one revolves around the bow staff of the main character, Mako, who's a monk that can use it to propel herself through the environment environment in platforming challenges, as well as use it for combat, of course. Some nice looking environments here too. This one's for PC only. If you're one of the folks out there who only has a Switch 2, then boy, it's a good week for you to catch up on all the things everyone else has been playing for years already. First, Final Fantasy XIV, and now Lies of P Complete Edition. That was out on Wednesday, August 5th. Still one of the best non-From Software Souls-likes for our money. Bringing it back down again to another chilled out game, on Thursday, August 6th, a game called Restory comes out, which is a kind of management sim and narrative game about running an old school electronics repair shop in Japan in the mid-2000s. Total millennial bait here. Well done to Tiny Build and the developers at Mandragora for cooking this one up in the lab. You'll repair things like PSPs, Nokia phones, and other things that are guaranteed to make you feel old when you recognize them. PC only for this one too. And finally, the last one for the week is of course Marvel Tokon Fighting Souls, the next fighting game from Guilty Gear developer Arc Systems Works and published by PlayStation for PC and PS5. A fast-paced tag team deal that features some very Japanese takes on Marvel heroes. The open beta last week seemed to get plenty of attention, both good and bad. Good in that it was a really meaty beta with access to a healthy chunk of single-player content and tutorial stuff, as well as online ranked and casual modes, and a lot of people seemed to jump in. Over 33,000 concurrent players at its peak on Steam alone, which is the most a fighting game has ever had. That is, whether or not you count multiverses as a proper fighting game. The bad stuff, man, that PC version was really unoptimized, which has left a lot of budding PC owners a little worried. Stuttery performance, a bunch of anti-cheat stuff, and that's on top of the required PSN login. These guys are going to have their work cut out for them over the next 7 days, and that's not even mentioning the divisive takes that are starting to bubble up in the pro fighting game community over the feel of all this. A beta is still a beta though. We'll check back in on this one next week, hopefully. One more cool looking release for this week, so put this on your radar. We talked about a new Game Freak game earlier in the episode, but it felt weird not to talk about creature collecting in the same breath. Luckily for us, there is one indie game with a new take on the genre called Montabi, and the twist here is, you guessed it, roguelike deck building and turn-based tactical combat for a few different layers of strategic thinking. You'll assemble a team of weird creatures, collect gear and evolve them to boost their combat capabilities, and set them to work in grid-based combat in order to save a city, I think. We've played this one a little bit, and don't let the bright, colorful art style fool you. There's actually a steeper learning curve here than you might think, so if you're a fan of slightly more cerebral RPG battling and build crafting, then this one's definitely worth a look. There's also a free demo on Steam that you can try out right now. And if you do want to try it out, we've actually left a link to it over on our Steam curator page, which also has links to all of the other put this on your radar stuff we've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. The last few weeks, we've been talking a lot about Sony's deeply disappointing decision to abandon physical media. So I thought we'd use our feel-good slot to highlight one of the more novel ways that people are hoping to literally hold on to their games. But Reddit user Jibril Sama isn't looking to take on Sony. He has his sights set on a bigger target, Gaben. No offense, Gabe, I just meant you have a really big storefront. Jibril got his hands on some old SSDs and thought he'd do something utterly pointless, but also totally awesome. Turn his Steam games into Steam cartridges. He loads the entire install file for the game onto the SSD before making a handsome jacket for it. He then built a custom script that will automatically load the game whenever he inserts the SSD into the docking adapter. Does he own these games? No, he doesn't. These are still just licenses that Gaben can yank whenever he feels like it. But would it be cool as hell to load up Elden Ring by slamming a cartridge into a dock? Hell yeah, it would. You know what? You could even blow on it first just to really recapture the magic. Another week, another showdown, and we're just about to enter August when Gamescom happens, the last big showcase event for the year where publishers look to give media hands-on with their upcoming year-end slate. We're actually going to have two people from our team over there, both Maddie Agnew and Jamie Hall from thisweekinvideogames.com. They've already got a totally packed schedule, much of it under NDA, so as not to spoil the surprise, so do look forward to some fun stuff both on the website and here on the channel. If you do want to stay up to the minute with what's going on in the industry, then be sure to sign up for free over at thisweekinvideogames.com or take advantage of our anniversary sale to become a supporter and get plenty of benefits, including ad-free versions of this very show. You've been a great audience, so a big thank you as always for stopping by. If you did like the video, remember to hit that like button, and if you're not yet subscribed, then don't forget to do that too. I'm out of here. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.